Okay, so the thumbnail does look a little confusing, but let me explain everything about this video. This video will focus on competitive fighting and Annihilate, which I have talked about too much at this rate. The goal of this experiment was to find the highest individual scores on Annihilate to see what the highest player score is on the game mode. This means I'm counting kills, deaths, and assists into the equation to measure this score. Now, in a message randomly by Aiden, he actually does list how the game modes are scored along with MVPs, and it's on the wiki if you want to check it out. The formula is... oh god. K plus 0.5A minus D. To put this in way more simple terms for you guys, imagine the scoring works like a point system. Every kill is worth 10 points, every assist is worth 5 points, but every death reduces the score by 10 points. As for what footage I used for this experiment, I have used all 3 qualifiers for the fighting major. They have consistently used the same Annihilate format, and unlike during Seal Survival, the meta wasn't as unstable, and the Annihilate game mode was sometimes different across the tournament, so the qualifiers are the most consistent way to find this out. Then again, this is being recorded before Gales of Judgment even finishes, so this is a risky gamble, but I am willing to take it. And if it actually gets broken, expect an update video, I guess. I also think it's important to say that I won't be covering every single score in this. There's a lot of Annihilate games and a lot of tied up scores, so I will be going through the 2 highest scores as those have no ties, and I feel beating those scores would be incredibly difficult, or maybe even impossible. Every score will be listed in this Google Doc I will put in the description if you want to check it out, as it lists the top 2 scoring players for each Anni game played with KDAs and their total score. I would put them in the video, but I'm going to be honest with you, that is too much work, and you probably just want to know what the hell the thumbnail means and what the highest scoring games look like. With all of this established, I do want to go over a few quick stats of Annihilate itself so far. If you want to skip to the actual Anni scores to talk about, I'll probably put a timestamp up in editing for you to skip to. Over the course of 137 maps played across the qualifiers as of recording this, 30 of those maps have been Annihilate, which results in Annihilate being played around 21.8% of the time. For specific Tourney percents, Looming Tempest had 7 Anni games out of 28 possible games, giving it a 25% play rate. Storm Surge had 12 Anni games out of 55 possible games. However, this number is a bit screwed up because Overclock vs Prestigious Pros has been lost to time, but it results to a 21.8% play rate. And up to this point, Gales of Judgment had 11 Anni games out of 54 possible games, giving it a 20.3% play rate. So Annihilate has risen a fair bit, and a 20% pick rate for it makes a lot of sense for how the game mode is. Out of those 30 Annihilate maps, however, Laundromat has been played 11 times, making it the most picked Anni map across all qualifiers. Chaos Canyon trails behind with 9 plays, with Dodgeball having 4 plays, and both Train Demolition and Keader Capital having 3 plays each. Another fun fact is that all Dodgeball picks up to this point have used 4 different layouts. Ring was used in Secret Keepers vs Overclock, Ridge was used in Funk Masters 2017 vs Forsaken, Standard was used in A-Gang vs Crimson Breakoff, and Tea Party was used in Crimson Breakoff vs Nightmare. And to end off this small stats section, the most Anni maps picked for a match was actually Crimson Breakoff vs Nightmare, but they could have played potentially 4 Annihilate maps. Unfortunately, this scrim was a free game set, so we would never see the other 2 Annihilate games played. Alright, let's actually get into the 2 scores now. We're in Looming Tempest. It's a semi-finals match of Spectre versus YC, the underdog of the whole qualifier versus a team that was on a hot streak for this tournament. The match starts and YC kind of flattened them on Iron Cafe. But don't worry, we are going into game 2, and it's Spectre's pick of Chaos Canyon, which has been their home Anni map for this entire qualifier. Now, I know some people know this game for a completely different reason near the end, but we aren't talking about that. Instead, our player who had a huge Anni score was Dove kept from YC as Slingshot, who played out of his mind this entire game, dropping 4,495 damage and a 9-1-11 scoreline. For reference, the second place player of this game was Keader, also on Slingshot, with 3,725 damage and a 10-4-5 scoreline, significantly less than Dovekep by a wide margin. A lot of Dovekep's output was mainly a lot of ranged chip damage, as Weissi's comp was made for lots of aggression, with Sling being their best way of poking and doing chip damage to the enemy, combined with impactful leg days to keep the momentum going. His one death was literally due to Keader on Slingshot just randomly picking him off, and that's it. It was a huge contributing factor to how Weissi were able to actually win this game, especially with Dovekep only dying once compared to everyone else, who were asserting tons of pressure by throwing themselves as Spectre, which ended up working out in the end as they won the Anni game, and they got also pretty high damage numbers to be fair. With a scoreline of 9-1-11, Dovekep got a player score of 135 for this game, marking a unique score onto the board which would never be beaten. For only a few months. Because in Gales of Judgment, an even crazier Anni score happened. A game that caused me to even make this video in the first place, and why I felt so intrigued about this. Let's set the stage for this score. It's round 4 of the loser's bracket. Two loose cannon underdog teams are ready to face off against each other for elimination, with the first underdog being Scorched Stars, and the second underdog team with our main character. God, I can't say this day with a straight face for this. Goo Goo Gaga. This was going to be a super close match, and people had no idea who had the edge as both teams showed tons of promise and skill. So anyways, let's skip to game 4, which was surprisingly Train Demolition. A weird pick Scorched Stars decided to throw in. Scorched Stars at this point was up 2-1 after a ridiculous comeback on Bowling Alley, and despite the banhammer on Goo Goo Gaga hitting a triple ban ult, it was not enough. Speaking of that banhammer, they are our main character, Lou Lovely Love, or Lou for short. Now, going into game 4, Lou still locks in with banhammer on this map, as it is their most confident main they use. However, with a comp containing subspace and other awkward synergies despite the double dive, this seemed more like a desperation pick than anything. But you would not be prepared for what Goo Goo Gaga would do in this game. Because Scorched Stars wanted Goo Goo Gaga to actually fight them head on, they tried to initiate rushes to where they were, but their fights did not work out well at all, and even when they tried to play more patiently, because that is an obvious thing to do here, Lou comes in with a coil tether and starts ban ulting half of them because why not, I guess? This forced Scorched Stars to start playing more back and try to force Goo Goo Gaga out. And even when Scorched Stars start playing super well, Goo Goo Gaga just hit them with incredibly coordinated dives to bolster the banhammer as much as they can, and the pressure was just nailing them to the wall. And Lou just keeps hitting ban ult after ban ult after ban ult, blocking up the entire game along with Hist and Star Z to basically close this game out and completely overloading Scorched Stars with offensive pressure. It was an absolute nightmare for them. After all of that in that quick game, Lou dropped a 16-4-4 scoreline with 4,941 damage. That is absurd considering the second closest in damage was Asuka on Scorched Stars doing 2,892 damage, and none of Lou's teammates even exceeded half of their total damage. With this 16-4-4 scoreline, Lou has dropped the best player scoreline in an Anni tournament game with a score of 140 for this performance. For reference, the two closest players to Lou in this match were Hist and Star Z with a scoreline of 529 and 309 respectively, both getting a player score of 75 this game. Unfortunately for Goo Goo Gaga, despite the funny name and monstrous Train Demolition performance, they weren't able to close out Game 5 Rocket Arena as Scorched Stars just hammered them in the close game. So, while Goo Goo Gaga didn't win the set to have a shot at making the major, maybe we can remember it for what Lou did in that Train Demolition game, and maybe Lou would be remembered for that godlike performance and maybe even having the highest player score you might ever see in an Annihilate game, unless some other team proves me wrong this qualifier or maybe even in the major. Thanks for watching.